Again, welcome to my GPA series. Today I'm going to outline the 6 areas or the 6 steps necessary in writing an academic paper. On the last occasion, I appealed to the importance of quality research, and I did make the point that quality research goes hand in hand with quality academic presentation. So, to build on the understanding of the importance of research, I must cover the steps in preparing the academic paper. And as we go through, we'll see the connection. So to get straight at it, the topic is your first step. In the early stages, let's say first, second year, the topic is usually assigned by the lecturer. You get a list of topics that falls within the subject discipline you are pursuing, and you get a set of directions or instructions via the use of keywords to set the direction of your paper or to indicate the depth you are required to go into your paper, and also to determine whether there is a slant or if you need to apply a neutral tone to your research. So these words will indicate to what extent you are to remain neutral or whether you are required to present a position for or against. So analyze will indicate that you are required to go into depth, compare and contrast, depth again, but that you must arrive at findings of key features of both instances, both perspectives on the issue that you are investigating, or maybe more than one or two positions, but compare and contrast really to bring together the key perspectives of that particular topic you are looking at. And so evaluate would have some aspect of analysis, but usually evaluate looks at your appreciation and understanding of the theory and how it is applied to the understanding of that particular topic. We'll get an example a little later on. When you get your topic, you are advised to consult with your lecturer. This is an ongoing process, consulting, because somewhere along the process of finding your position, of finding yourself in the exercise, you can get a bit lost, or it can become somewhat frustrating because you may end up going in different directions. So your lecturer is more or less the person who will provide that direction continuously. Consider the lecturer as your compass. We are talking about creating a timeline. Now this is important because there are many things you're going to have to get into when you get this topic. So set your timeline, and perhaps you can break that timeline down in relation to the different activities. So timeline for your research, and in this instance your research would be gathering all the information, determining all the sources and the volume of information that you're going to need for your topic. That will require some reading, or extensive reading rather, and making sure that you keep notes. Organize and outline your work and your paper. You get to the draft, and again I remind you that the draft is not singular. A draft can have many editions. Then you revise and you have your checklist, you edit and you proofread. Now why do we want timelines for each area? Well, naturally research is going to take up the bulk of your time and effort. But then research would be guided by what you are required to do. And if you are in final year, when you choose your topic, you have a particular scope of information that you would need and you will have to go into depth, and then you have to determine what methodology you would be using. So research is the bulk of the whole process of preparing the academic paper, and you would want to start as early as possible. So let's say, for example, you have 1 month to submit your assignment. Well, a month, we have 4 weeks, and so determine which one will take, let's say, perhaps less time as you go along, because you would be confident, you would be organized by the time you get to the draft, so it may take perhaps a day or two. So within that month, I can't decide for you what the timeline would be, only to suggest that because research is so vast that really you should start as early as possible and start. Now, research in this instance doesn't mean that you are going to do this extensive reading immediately. It means that you have to, just like when you are preparing a meal, you have to now do a mental shopping list. You have to decide where you're going to get your material, and remember the consulting phase. So this consulting phase may very well guide you as to where you are going to begin your research. After creating that timeline, and of course, as best as possible, stick to that timeline. You then go and find your sources. Now, sources, as you see, has scope and it provides various viewpoints. So the scope of your sources will be determined by the type of sources, or they in fact go hand in hand. So your sources, of course, will be text. They would be other forms of media, for example, CDs. It may come in the form of a video. I'm saying it's not restricted to just books. And you have your online databases. And you have, apart from online databases, which is really restricted and controlled because of the disciplines, the fact that they are academic databases and they are accessed via your library. Wider than online databases, you have the internet. So these are not all the sources. I'm merely just listed the usual access points. Viewpoints, of course, keeping in mind the directions that you were given, would provide, as you find your sources, each source will provide you with a range of perspectives on the topic. When we get to the questions, and I put in brackets research, so it's really the research questions, or the questions that will guide your research. So again, look at, when I talk about the bulk of research, look at the fact that you have to find information for the topic, not just restricted for the particular topic, but you have to find related issues, particularly if you are to compare and contrast and you are to evaluate and debate. Related issues, you have to look at the contributions. Contributions really mean what previous research existed on the topic, and who are the contributors, meaning the authority. The authorities in this regard would usually come from the academic online databases. You look at what are the conclusions or the findings of the research. Now, let me relate that back to when I made the point that research is the bulk of your activity when preparing an academic paper. Between looking for information on the topic and the extent of the contributions in that particular area of study, you will definitely need to do extensive reading and make notes. This is why students find themselves so frustrated by the time they get to perhaps having a draft, or they get to close they get close to the deadline and they realize that there is so much work to do. And then you get lost in the process because notes were not taken or there were not sufficient notes. And then you find yourself all over the place because yes, you did your reading or you would have gone to all the various sources, but because it's not organized and in a central location, you become overwhelmed. So when we get to the thesis statement is the statement that declares your position. It indicates to the reader where exactly you are on the issue. So when you are making your declaration, you are either going to prove or argue, expand on it, or do a comparison. So this is why I'm saying there are always connections between the preparation of your academic paper and the research process. Because given the instructions or in choosing your topic, you take a particular direction. By the time you get to the thesis statement, you yourself will give the direction of your research by deciding if you are going to argue, prove, or expand on the topic. Now this only looks simple, but this is an exercise that takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort, and it must be managed from the beginning to the end. And by the way, this is not the end, because when we get to 6 is actually the paper. And when you are ready to get your paper together, I'm going to list now the key areas you have to look at. When you are preparing the paper, by the time you get all this information, you now have to list and classify your points and your perspectives. So really you're putting everything now in hard copy for you to revise and to edit. So we are listing all the areas of coverage, all the different viewpoints, all the authorities, everything goes on paper now. And your paper will have sections and it will have to go according to the academic outline, and you will bring back your thesis by providing an introduction, and in your introduction you will also provide some sort of background information to your topic. So all this we will plug it into an example and see how we work the 6 steps of the preparation of your academic paper in line with going through the research process. So while your thesis statement is merely a declaration statement, your thesis will go back into the introduction because it's going to set the direction of the rest of your presentation. So you have remember we are at the draft stage, so you have all your notes, all your viewpoints, you have the sections that you are required to include, and remember, all this is in line with academic writing standards and academic conventions. So I hope the key terms are being tied in as we go along. We now get to the presentation of the points for your analysis or your comparative study or your debate. And so you will organize or put it in such a flow that it actually makes sense. Makes sense meaning, if you are for the topic, naturally you would align all the contributions and perspectives in the order to support your point. Or if you are against, similarly you will list your points to prove And this applies really if you are doing an analysis or a comparative study. Points to prove and points to dispute. You are going to weigh your arguments, because if you are for the position, likely you will find enough material to really go to the slant of agreeing with that position, and if you are disputing, it's the same, it's the reverse process. Okay, so let's use an example. Let's say the topic is, I'm trying not to use marijuana again, but it comes so easily because it is the hotly debated topic now. And I mean, if you are following news, you would find that marijuana is featuring for different reasons. I mean, several countries have legislated the use of marijuana, which by extension has affected trade, and so many things happen. There's a spin-off effect to one decision made about the use of marijuana. Okay, so let's stick to marijuana. And I did say there are countries that have legalized the use of marijuana. Okay, so let's see. The instruction might be to look at those countries that have legalized marijuana. And you might have to look at, has it been beneficial, or what has been the fallout? Really, just look at the effects of legislation of marijuana in countries that have done so, or countries. So we start with one. The topic is the impact of legalization of marijuana. That is a broad topic. What is the direction? Perhaps you might be looking at compare and contrast. The compare and contrast may look at cases that have instances where there might have been an increase in crime or an increase in marijuana trade, whatever the outcomes. So you are going to compare and contrast insofar as there might have been more negative, more positive, or whichever way, but you have to research it to the extent that you will bring forward what has happened since the legalization of marijuana. And if you are doing a compare and contrast, you will not do your research to bring you to a position where it's ready to show the negative side of it. Because then when we go back to the ethical standards of research, you would have thwarted your research. And so again, we get to the point where if you compromise your research process, you will compromise your academic paper. If you are to debate it, you still need to find points to prove, points to dispute, and weigh. For example, if the outcome has been an increase in the marijuana trade, then you have to research the extent, you have to research really what would have become of the revenue. Where does the revenue go? Does the revenue go to the state? Is it that there's an underground economy? And then you have to weigh how beneficial is it to have an underground economy that undermines the national economy. That is the kind of research you need to do if you are looking at the impact of legislating marijuana. Okay, so we get to the timeline. Now there's a wealth of information on marijuana, and I mean this information comes from all different directions, and it will introduce various perspectives. So this is when I talk about research, read and take notes. When you look at your sources, you will find a scope, that the scope on marijuana use is so wide that you need to put it back in a context, or you need to stay focused. You then have to ask the research questions, or the question towards the research or the position that you want to take. So info for the topic is marijuana and the legalizing of it. The related issues, the economy. The related issue would be marijuana use. A related issue would be the effects, negative and positive. Can you find those effects? The related issues would be the effects has to be discussed from various perspectives such as medical, sociological, social. Understand? That is why I was warning that the research process is a bulky process and it has to be managed with timelines. Okay, so we get to contributions or contributors. Again, we go back to the sources, we go back to the understanding that the value of the contribution must be in line with the value of your presentation. And everything ties in the research process, because if you want to get quality contributions and quality contributors, then you have to go to your online databases where you would get quality research via journals and material that is of a scholarly standard and material that has been reviewed. And by review I mean that it would have been examined robustly and it would have been scrutinized to the extent that it satisfies the academic standards for research. So by the time you get to your conclusion, not your conclusion, sorry, by the time you get to the conclusion, it would be that the research into the use of marijuana, the effects of legislating marijuana, you would find in your readings that there are conclusions that point to different impacts. The conclusion in one study may be that it was not the best decision. Another conclusion may be that it requires further study and they need to perhaps introduce new legislation, or whatever the conclusion is. It's really about guiding you to understand how much more research is required in the area of legalizing marijuana. By the time you get to your thesis statement, it would be declaring your position, not necessarily subjectively, but declaring your position that you would have evaluated the information and decided, look, legislating marijuana is perhaps not the best way to go in Trinidad and Tobago, simply because for all the preparation that would have been done in the other countries, when you examine our political landscape, our sociological landscape, when you examine other related issues, you would find that we are far from ready and legislation cannot possibly be considered at this point unless we do something, unless we put things in place to handle the effects of increased use in marijuana. This is the kind of research we are talking about. So the thesis statement is not you saying that you are proposing that we legalize, as much as you are saying, having carefully looked at the research and the literature on legislating marijuana. My position is we need to take our time and perhaps put other things in place by maybe looking at the court system, looking at the prison population in relation to persons held with marijuana. We have other things to do before we think of legislating marijuana. So your thesis is really an informed position, a word of caution perhaps, or point the reader to getting more into depth into the issue and not just arrive at rush judgment. And so if you are arriving at that position, you would be proving and expanding, but again, it ties in with the instructions given on the assignment And by the time you get to it, the end of it, you are taking a position that aligns with what the instruction is. If it's a topic that you would have chosen, at any rate you would have indicated from the beginning what the objective of your study is. And so your thesis must be in line with your objective. So you get to the paper and you list and classify. List means that you would have put on paper all the issues that must be considered when examining the effects of legislating marijuana. Sections and the outline of the paper would be in line with the academic conventions. Your introduction and background would be, okay, I am doing the impact of legislation on the impact of legislating marijuana. What I must highlight is this has happened within the last year. It has happened rapidly because it was triggered by. Really, the background would be preparing the reader for understanding why the topic is relevant. And you list your points to prove, to dispute, and to weigh. So, this is the academic paper, the steps involved in preparing your paper. How it lines up with understanding the importance of research is that if you don't manage your research, if you don't invest in quality research, you will not have a quality academic paper because you would not have sufficient scope, you would not have quality sources, you would have compromised the research process because your info on the topic is scant. You don't have sufficient perspective and depth on the issues that relate, and your contributions or your authority is perhaps coming from a commercial website, so it cannot withstand the scrutiny of academic standards. And just as I said in the last presentation, you really would have wasted your time on this paper, and it really would be to no avail. So this is why I appeal to students to cherish the research process, cherish the importance of it in achieving the standard that you are required to maintain. Understand that it is really the essence of your academic pursuit, and it is what gives you your worth when you present yourself as a student of the discipline, as a professional, and for future academic prospects or the world of work or business. So this is going to continue. I will cover other topics related to research, and I feel the need to take my time with this process and all the related topics before we get into really the meat of what the research process is, because without understanding the importance of academic writing, preparing your paper, critical thinking, all the areas that I would have covered before, I don't see the relevance in getting into the research process if I didn't highlight the importance of everything that I've discussed before. So on the next occasion, I will get into aspects of preparing your paper in relation to conducting the research process. Until then, again, I really hope that you give it a try, you keep at it, and I really want that these videos motivate you to revisit whatever is challenging you, and also keep in mind you are not alone in this journey. So until next time, keep at it and stay blessed.